Dana Miller presents the 9th Annual Obesity Conference, a practical look at obesity, diabetes, and current strategies. Featuring Mary Jo Rapini, LPC, Keeping the Passion Alive After Weight Loss.
Welcome back. Normally the lecture after lunch is one of the toughest ones for both people listening as well as for the speaker, but I guarantee you that won't be a problem here. I'd like to introduce Mary Jo Rapini. I think you're going to really enjoy her lecture. She's a wonderful speaker. And she's currently on Houston Fox 26 on Mondays on a segment called Ask Mary Jo. So hopefully we'll be able to ask you things. Yeah. She's a very popular keynote speaker across the United States. You'll see her dynamic style is engaging for those dealing with intimacy issues and relationship challenges, including weight loss surgery clients as they transition to healthier lifestyle, or simply hanging on to unasked questions about intimacy and sex relationships. So I'm going to give the floor to her. Please welcome Mary Jo Rapini.
Well, hi, all of you. I probably wouldn't have needed this microphone because I've got a huge voice. But if anyone cannot hear me, please let me know, and I'll be happy to explain anything to you. Today's talk, I'm going to try and keep you awake, although I don't have my props. I usually bring out vibrators and lubes, but because it's a medical talk, we have to be careful of that. Anyway, so I'm going after this like you're probably sitting there going, why is a sex therapist here besides to keep me awake? I am here because I work in bariatric medicine as part of my job. I also am a sex therapist with a physician at Baylor, and he's in the urology department. And one thing we have found that's true is that people who gain weight many times have issues that haven't been addressed at an earlier time. And the weight is simply there to comfort them, to reassure them, to help them fit in. So when patients lose weight, many times what the physicians and the staff will see, the healthcare workers, is that they do well losing weight for a while, and then all of a sudden they start going back to comfort foods. And we don't often ask, what's going on with you? Like, what else is happening? What are you feeling? And I think this is so important in medical health care that we take the time. My husband's a physician, and the first thing he says is, we don't have time. We have like 10 minutes max to talk to him, and we're afraid that if we open the Pandora's box, begin asking them what's going on with you, that they're going to tell us. And we're not comfortable. Like, my husband says, I don't want to know what's going on in their bedroom. And I'm like, that's the wrong answer. Like, you should want to know. Not because you're a voyeur, but you should want to know because it's important. It's total care. It's looking at your patient. So, I've just got these slides to remind you that I like having a form in the physician's office. The physicians, I work with a medical team called UT MIST. Dr. Eric Wilson heads that bariatric surgery program up. It's affiliated with University of Texas Hospitals in Houston, Texas. He actually has this on his intake form for the bariatric patients. Like, what does loving yourself look like? Make a list of things that it would look like. Most of the patients go, I don't really know. I've never thought about it. They haven't thought about it. But unfortunately, when you lose a massive amount of weight, that is not the time to start addressing this stuff. You should start thinking about it way ahead of time and working with a sex therapist or a therapist if you haven't already. And then I actually do this other part considering the following. What are the motivations and goals with my spouse? Is it worth it to put passion back into my marriage? Many of the patients I see, I evaluate for the revisional bariatric surgeries. That means they've had one surgery, for whatever reason it stopped working, and they have not only regained the weight back that they lost, they've regained additional weight. I run a support group. 60% of the women who have gained and lost weight more than 50 pounds, more than once, have been sexually abused. And so what they understand is when I lose this weight, first of all, when you're sexually abused, what happens is it's like it permanently stunts your emotional development, intimate-wise. So when you lose weight, or the more you start looking like you did or what you remember at that time, the more you go back into this panic mode if someone looks at you. It doesn't matter if you're 20 years past that. You will be that 14-year-old again. You will be that 16-year-old again. So we have to understand that many of the patients we deal with who are having trouble losing weight, first of all, have been sexually abused. And that's why talking to them about their inability to talk about it is so important. If they come to see their physician and their physician says, "How's the love life?" and they go, "Fine," and they just let it go, nothing's going to happen because they're embarrassed about it. And it's that isolation that can continue to damage them emotionally, and that they hold in and they begin eating when they're in an uncomfortable situation. And I always remind all my patients, listen, sex is good. If I could write you out one prescription to help you do better, I would have sex as exercise, but sex would be it. Healthy sex life is so important to everybody's personal health. And for some people, that's once a year. For others, that's 3 times a week. But knowing what helps your patients is integral to helping them not really basically manage their weight loss once they lose it. So the leading causes of sexual dissatisfaction, they're usually caused by these things. Now, you might go through the list and say, well, lack of a partner, yeah, that's a bummer. And there's dating apps and things like that, but that's a bummer too, because anybody who's out there dating right now, I feel so sorry for you. This is very difficult time for dating in general, but if you have just had a weight loss surgery or you've just lost a phenomenal amount of weight, you don't know what you're looking for. You don't even know what's out there. So the first person that comes along and flatters you, you're more susceptible to. And those are a big cause of the health problems we're seeing with sexuality. Also the normal physical problems that people have. Erectile dysfunction, men's usually gets better after a massive loss of weight. Vaginal dryness, mental health problems, of course, depression, hypertension, diabetes, and relationship difficulties. I would venture to say that relationship difficulties are the bigger cause of sexual dissatisfaction than anything else. Resentment is the biggest libido killer ever. And you're not going to be able to give somebody enough Viagra or do any procedure for them enough if they have feelings of shame, resentment, their partner saying bad things to them. And that's why mental health with these patients, especially sexual mental health, is so important for our patients. So this is usually what I recommend for patients who are basically trying to get fit again in their sexual relationships. First of all, the fitness improves your mood and your blood flow. So a lot of people, when they hear the word exercise and they've been failures with exercise in the past, it scares them. So basically, we're just using the words movement. We want you to move. It really express things like yoga, aerobics if they can. That's an outdated term. I think they have now HIIT, Pilates, everything else. But finding something that your patients will actually go to is so important. And learning about the body, giving them permission to explore their body, to try new things is so important. And I usually will bring in other therapists who will help, like with getting the Kegel exercises going, the physical therapists help with that a lot, with strengthening the pelvic floor, because many of our patients have had obesity forever, and those muscles are really weak. So when they do get thinner and they do have sex, it's not satisfactory because they can't orgasm, they don't feel good about their body. And if we can help them with a actual physical pelvic therapist, that improves their ability to start doing the things that they're working on, making their sex life better. People want to know there's hope. If a patient hears you say, you know, there's hope for that, we can do that. We can help you tighten those muscles. We can help you have a greater sex life. Physically, they'll be more motivated to do the emotional work they need to do. And I usually will go through this with them, like I will help them set up their dates, turn off all your devices. Many of them were, you know, when I asked them what their first memory of being obese is, they'll tell me probably 7, 8, maybe 12, 13. Well, when you're 12 or 13, you don't think about things like this. And even if you watch TV and movies and you've seen how sex is done, or maybe you've explored a little bit with a very bad lover, you know a little bit, but you really don't know how to set up a healthy sex life, like how to actually plan it and make it part of your day. So little things like turning off devices, turning on soft music, giving yourself plenty of time to prepare. Foreplay, explaining to them that foreplay is something they do for themselves. Many of them are they're passive in intimacy. So they will say things very discouraging about their partner, like he doesn't care or she doesn't care. They're not a part of this. Well, reminding them, you know what? You have to take responsibility for your sexual health. It's important because it's important for your health. Forget about your partner right now. Let's take care of you and support their ability to communicate with their partner. I think this is really important, teaching people how to look at each other in the eyes and talk about things, hold hands while they're talking. And of course, investing in lubricants and other things that are going to enhance their sexual experience. And I always remind them, many of my patients are premenopausal, menopausal. Premenopausal usually happens 10 years before you go through menopause. So for many people, most people, that's late 30s, early 40s. So it's kind of scary because many of you may say, my God, that's only 5 years away. You better start preparing because things change. And your sexuality, just like the rest of your body, changes very quickly. And understand the goal that sex is to feel connected. You know, we've taken sex, especially now if you're dating now or if your patients are, you may want to remind them, sex out in the real world, out in our world, has become very recreational. It's something you do. It's something you do on a Saturday night, and you might not see that person again. That is terrible. That is a terrible thing to have to go through if you've ever struggled with obesity. Because everything that happens, them not understanding how society has changed, how quick everything is, they take it very personally. And when a patient, one of our patients especially, starts getting discouraged about their body, the way they look, or how they appear compared to other women, they begin using their vice. What is their vice? Food. And many times the surgeons are looking for what went wrong. Like, let's get a look at that surgery again and see, you know, did we make the limb long enough? Did we make it short? Is there obstruction? A lot of the obstruction is in their mind, and it's how they feel about themselves. And it all goes back to their most intimate relationship with whoever that person is. So products that may help and improve, I mean, over-the-counter things, the suppositories, Valium, Replens, medications, They have to be written, of course, Premarin or Estrase. And then the laser treatment, a lot of people are having great success with Mona Lisa, but I've just heard more about it. It's still not FDA approved for what they're using it for, so you may really want to be careful with that. I do some work with the breast cancer survivors at MD Anderson as well, and it may interest you more and more of those, the oncologists at MD Anderson are linking with the obesity surgeons and also just the food management centers, because they're seeing that obesity is definitely a cause or one of the preludes to cancer. And so we're starting to work together more. So when I have one of the cancer patients, the breast cancer patients from MD Anderson is very encouraging getting a sex therapist in there and saying, listen, you need to talk to someone about your relationship. Why? Because they know that when sex is going well, the patient's immune system is going to be better, they're going to feel better about themselves, and they're going to be able to sustain the treatments better and hopefully go into remission or recovery or whatever stage they're at. So I would definitely always be pretty liberal with what I prescribed here for my patients. And for all of you sitting here, since you are advocates for your patients in many ways, as I am too, I think it's important that we all start thinking about this, being more comfortable with our sexuality. When I tell someone I'm a sex therapist, usually what happens is the room kind of gets hushed and they're like, oh my God, do you have sex? Like, are you out? No, I don't have sex with patients. I have a relationship. But what I think is so fascinating, we're all so crazy about sex. We talk about sex more than any other country. I've gone all over the world I've ever been. But the Italians show it. The French show it. They show sexuality in what I consider a healthier way. Sex is holding hands while you're eating, having strawberries and champagne in bed. That's foreplay too. I mean, I think marriages and relationships would be better for all of us if we started instituting more scheduled foreplay with our partners. I'm going to tell you, you have to schedule sex in your calendar. Well, I do personally because I travel a lot and my husband is in medicine. All of you are in medicine, and I don't know how you don't schedule sex in your calendar. And if you start scheduling it and you start getting laid and feeling good, you're going to be more likely to tell your patients, how is your sex life? Because you're going to feel more comfortable with your sex life. If you haven't had sex in 6 months and you're like, there's just no time, yep, you're going to be one of those people that turns red when you try to ask your patient, how's it going at home? And when they go, fine, say, no, really, I want to know, how is your intimacy? Intimacy is the buzzword. There's nothing dirty, nothing nasty about that. But if you open that door, they will tell you. They will begin to tell you. My husband just turns on the TV. He doesn't care. Or my wife just closes the door. I haven't seen my wife naked in 12 years. This is what one of my patients said. The wife lost 100 pounds, and do you think she took the towels away from the shower door? Or do you think she let her husband see her? What do you think? No. You know why? Because, well, for one thing, she did have a lot of sagging skin, but her real abuse was in her head. It was what she was doing to herself. And her husband, thinking he was respecting her, well, I'm not going to, I'm not begging to see her body. I just tell her I love her. That's not enough. She needed someone to talk to. So it's taken like 8 months of therapy to get her to let him see her. And, nudity is one thing if you're hanging out all over, but for you to share intimacy in your nude body with your partner, that's true intimacy. You need that. You need that skin to skin. So I'm not telling you guys to show your partner what feels good to you, but you may want to. You may want to think, how difficult is it for you all to talk to your partner about sex? When you were dating, you talked about it all the time. Like, would you be so bold to be able to text your partner right now and say, thinking about some sexy part of their body? Would you be so bold to do that right now? Or have you just not talked about it for so long with your partner that it would be embarrassing? And he'd be like, probably he or she would text back, what? Is this a wrong mail? Like, they'd probably be so excited, you guys should do it. But I'm not going to tell you what to do because, I'm not your therapist. I will talk at happy hour about it, but, I'm just saying. Okay, so satisfying long-term sex. See, these are the things I really wanted to bring, but everything I get from companies, I can tell you that off-label, I think. Why we're drinking. I'm not sure. I'm going to check that. But anyway, set the mood. Have champagne, bubble baths, silk sheets. They have these beautiful things now you can spray on sheets and make it just smell so good. And we do know the olfactory center is very close to the sex center in your brain. In fact, I think they kind of overlap. So smell is important in the bedroom. It's important all the time. But make time to talk about sex. There are studies done where couples who, all we changed in their marriage at all was we had them start talking about sex 10 minutes a day. And it was very awkward. The couples would say, well, I don't know what I want to say. I really don't want to talk to you about anything, let alone sex. But if you just start talking to your partner, and you can even tell your patients, things will start changing. And if you don't have anything going on in the bedroom, talk about your friends' sex lives, or talk about what you see on TV, and maybe eventually you'll get there. Have fun with sex. Sex is meant to be fun. It's meant to be very deep, intimate, personal, sacred between two people. Healthy sex. And, try accessories. There's a lot of things out there that you can try that don't violate most of our feelings about whatever, if sex is spiritual to you or whatever. So it's a little something for everybody, I promise, that you're still not deviant. You're still within the realm. At least for a sex therapist, I can say that. So try various sexual positions. Weight loss changes where everything is, and how our patients used to orgasm or feel good prior to their weight loss. If it's over 50 pounds, it's going to feel different, and different positions will affect you. Just as when you're in perimenopause, different positions affect you differently. And when you're in menopause, once again, everything changes. In fact, about every 4 to 6 years, sexual positioning should really change. Like, what feels good to you should really change. And erectile difficulties become less of a struggle, of course, if there's more options. And so sex therapists have lots of options, and that's another reason I work with the obesity team, because like I said, there's always things you can do to help people. But unless their issues are resentment linked, those clients need actual psychotherapy. It is really hard to overcome that kind of anger. In fact, I personally know from my own patient load that is a leading cause of divorce. You get so resentful and just so angry that your partner, everything gets projected onto them. They become the villain. They become repulsive. You don't want anything to do with them. You can't heal that. At least I haven't found the way. And then reflections that can help. I think this is really a great form if you had it. If you had a therapy practice that you did have time to talk to people, especially like the weight management teams, they're using this. Who am I now sexually? Does this go against my personal values? Do I feel healthy or excitement or dreadful anxiety about it? If they've been sexually abused, they always rate that. They always talk about that one. And do I feel good about my body? How you feel about your body is everything. And then keep in mind, expect sexual changes, whether it's you or your partner. There will be sexual changes after weight loss, period. Sexual changes are inevitable but not insurmountable. And the help of an intimacy sex therapist can help you as you go forward. Most sex therapists are trained in abuse. We have to be now. And that's verbal abuse, sexual abuse, and physical abuse. I mean, because many times one of those three really does play into how our patients feel about sexuality. It's incredible in the obese population. We didn't really expect to see that, the numbers as high as we have. But it makes sense, right? That you would use food, if food was a comfort and you felt so uncomfortable with what happened and you were never able to talk about it, that of course you would eat more when you were stressed or feeling more vulnerable. And that's the end. So I'm open for questions. If any of you have questions, I'd love to entertain those now. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah.
It's actually not a question, but I want to tell you about something happened in my practice. I had a patient come to me, and this gives hope to everybody.
Yeah.
He was about to be, in 2 weeks, he was going to be 100 years old.
Wow.
And he asked me for samples of Viagra.
Fantastic.
And he said, he says, I need the Viagra because I need to keep up with my wife. She's 3 years younger than me.
That is,
So there's hope there.
yes, that is, well, and I think a lot of, in general, we believe a lot of myth, right? We hear all the time that menopause, when women go through menopause, they're not as into sexuality. I want to tell you guys that just is not true. That I've seen more, and I don't see happy patients. So I see people with a problem. But as they go through menopause, if they feel good about their body, they're sexier, they're more into sex than they've ever been in their life because they're free. They feel free. Their biggest problem is a partner. And if you keep, I really encourage couples to try and restore that intimacy they had together. When I run a food addiction group as well as a support group, and I am so interested in this, when I give them the assignment, okay, tonight, first of all, we wipe out all drive-thrus. Like, we get away from fast foods. I try to do that by step 3. By step 3, I'm like, every time when you're home and you feel awkward or you feel bored or angry or you want to turn to food, I want you to turn to your partner or one of your kids and hug them. If the kids are little, they have no trouble. The partner, rarely. And I've noticed that, and I've said, what's up with you guys? Why don't you turn to your partner? Oh, I don't want anything to do with him. And most of my patients in the food addiction group are women. And I find that they are really limited, because how are you going to know how you feel about sex, to feel good about sex, if you don't want anything to do with your partner? And a lot of it is because they've hidden themselves. Just like they've dissociated from their body, they've dissociated from that part of their marriage, that intimacy part. And it's a real thing. So, yeah.
The problem I see in my practice, postmenopausal women with decreased libido, and they're like, Doc, what can you give me?
Exactly.
And
I mean, it's so, I guess, and what they'll tell me is, yeah, I went to the doctor and he told me I had to lose weight. Because, that's the standard thing, because we know that would work, right? I would encourage them with getting, if it hurts, it's one thing. But if they have absolutely no libido, I would get on the movement kick. I would say, listen, I need you to move, and I would give them a list of activities, and I would start making intimacy one of those activities. Because even, I think so much of that is emotional as well as their weight. But if they can count, they hate exercise, the majority of them, so much, or they've had so much failure, that if they know they can go for a walk or hug their partner, and I start really low bar many times, like hugging their partner or walking 1 block, holding their partner's hand, that's a movement activity. And you'd be surprised what that will start doing. Yeah.
so we know in men, doing weightlifting increases testosterone.
Right.
And the men who complain to me about decreased libido, and I tell them to hit the weights, they're like, I'm there.
Right.
But is there any evidence that
Yes, lifting weights does help women, but it's not the same for women, because even though that would help them, getting the women motivated to do it is a whole nother thing. And they won't go into a gym usually. So that means they're looking at something they can buy and just do with a video. There is a lot of research about muscle movement and getting their muscles, but they're so defeated already. They're much different patients than men, with especially motivating them sexually. Because the men, if you tell the men, you're going to feel better, you're going to be able to sustain an erection if you start lifting weights, most guys will do it. You tell women that, and they're like, I don't care. Why do I care? Look at him. Would you want to have sex with him? That's how they talk to me. And I'm like, okay. So they're thinking out of a different box.
Yeah, but the women that come to me, they do care.
Yeah, they do care. So that if you told them, what really seems to help women a lot, strength-wise, and then to go into weights, is if we can get them into a yoga class. And yoga actually does help with, like, for women, a lot of women's issues are escaping. Like, they need to get out of the thought process. So if we can get them to do yoga and control their breathing and start the thought process, then they can get focused enough to lift weights. I usually start them with yoga because they can be successful. And it takes a lot of strength to do yoga. And there are good studies about yoga, especially with orgasm. So, yeah.
What about the excess skin? I mean, the female patients are so concerned and worried about it afterwards. And naturally, we recommend, skin removal. And that's not always realistic for a lot of women.
Right.
A lot of patients. So how can that be managed if you're trying to rekindle after all this weight loss?
There are some websites that sell different camisoles that you can wear that are sexy. What I find is, as women lose weight, especially in bariatrics, I think it's a little different with weight management, the medical part, because they lose weight differently. But when you get a duodenal switch, for example, it looks like you were walking out of a uniform. I mean, the weight loss is so quick, but they usually will start seeing bones somewhere, and they love that. It's kind of strange for them at first, like they'll see, and I usually will say, okay, so I have a big chart of just a body. They're like just an example of a body. I say, start circling areas you like, and it will usually be the clavicle, like they'll start seeing a bone. And so when I say buy a camisole and just start wearing your baggy bottoms, but a camisole on top, they will usually like that. And that will usually inspire them to start, well, I do look good. Or they'll start looking for the good parts, because I have to basically train them to readjust and start thinking of the body parts they love. The loose skin is not going to go away, and unless they get it surgically removed. But even then, there's a scar, and it costs money. So basically, it's camouflaging, learning to direct them to the areas they can accept, and then working from there. So, but I look for bones. When they see a bone, we make a big deal out of it because they get excited. Yeah.
So I'm a dietitian.
Uh-huh.
With a surgical and medical practice. So the way our setup is they'll see the surgeon first for the consultation, and then I may be the only person that they see during their pre-op course.
Right.
So they kind of grow that relationship during that time.
Yes.
In my experience, I don't know if this is this way for anybody else, but post-operatively for my females, they lose great weight, they're really motivated, they're really smart, they know the concepts very well, but now their person that they have had is now insecure about their weight loss, and will now start to feed into, you're not the same person. Like, I have had females who will say to me, we haven't had sex since my surgery, and this is at the year mark at this point. So they're going all this time with their person kind of feeding into their insecurities. And for me, being a dietitian, I'm wildly out of my, range with this. I don't know how to handle that or what to say to help her or him, if it's the female that really doubts.
Right.
Insecurity on the part of the partner is what I deal with most of the time post-operatively. There is somebody in their stuff with how they look. They're always is, but it's the dynamic that changes interpersonally that I don't really know how to address it.
Well, and I think that's like most of our patients have body dysmorphia. I mean, the way they see themselves is not the way they look. And so basically, when they're losing weight, we have to give them 2 to 5 years to get used to that weight. If their partner up front is real adamant, like, I don't like the way you look right now, then usually I see them as a couple. And I get, when someone doesn't like something, there's fear underneath it. So if I can get their partner to start opening up about what they fear. But I have had couples come in and talk to me before before the surgery, and it's been usually a wife's surgery, and the wife will sit there and say in front of her husband, well, listen now, I don't want to look like you, Mary Jo. Like, I don't want I still want a booty, and I still want my girls. Like, I don't want to be a board like you. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't think you're going to be a board. I think that's something with bone structure. But they're just so blatant about what they want. And I've had their partner basically, when his wife got too small, make an appointment with me and say, I'm not attracted to this at all. Like, I used to love her hourglass, and I loved her booty, and, now it's just like everything's hanging, and, she doesn't have a butt, and, so basically it's just working with him about health. And I think the more we stress health, and we spend a lot of time on the bariatric team with this, talking that this surgery is not a cosmetic surgery. You get cosmetic surgery after the bariatric surgery if you want it. This surgery is about health. We're trying to lower that BMI.
Do you feel like this is worthwhile preoperatively to do a support group on this topic?
Absolutely.
I want to do it to not scare them.
Well, I think a little fear is good in this area. Like, I would just say, listen, we've had couples, because we have had couples split. But I honestly think the reason they split is they were already, they weren't really intimate. True intimacy, you can see what it looks like. Like, they're supportive of each other. And when I asked their partner, what do you think is a good weight? He's like, we just want to be healthy. We just want to raise our kids and mentor well for our kids. And you could always take, if you had a younger population, you could really talk more and boost up weight loss as a responsible lifestyle change for your family, making it so that the couple realized, yes, you're going to look better, but more than that, you're going to be able to do things together and be there for your kids. So, but I'm never worried. Like, with the revision surgery, I'm sure I scare a lot of patients, because I tell them up front, the weight loss is going to be completely different. It's not going to be as fast. You're going to hit more plateaus. You absolutely cannot go back to your old vices. And I call everything a vice, because I think they feel less discriminated against. I'm like, listen, I have my vices, you have your vices. One of your vices is food. And you use it, and you used it because you needed to when you were a child. Whatever was going on in your home or your thinking or the way you were raised, it's an easy thing, and it's a kid mentality. You turn to food. But I said, now you've got to reparent your child, and this is not okay. You're turning to food, and this is going to kill you. So, yeah.
On the other side of the spectrum, somebody finds that they weren't attractive beforehand, and now they starting to become intimate. And then they think they have this ambivalence in their mind, well, he would not have liked me.
Oh, yes.
How do you deal with that issue?
Well, usually those couples split because there's so much resentment. No, I'm really serious. There's so much resentment and shame that I think, I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's the worst thing you can tell your partner all of a sudden to be. And sometimes the people will kind of brag like, oh yeah, she wants me all the time now, or he wants me all the time. I'll say, how do you feel about that? And then if they're excited, I'm like, okay, this was a partner, they were intimate. But if it's somebody like, I want nothing to do with them, then I know. But most times I'm very liberal with therapy. If I can say, listen, you're going to feel better, you're going to manage your weight better if you get therapy, then as long as you've got good therapists on your team who will take that patient for you or that couple, I think it's a worthwhile thing to do. I wouldn't try to handle that part in my office. The main part that I'm hoping medical practitioners and everybody in here will do is to just start asking them, how's your intimacy? How do you feel about it? Because, you know, and if you're worried, like, oh my God, what if they tell me? Just have some therapist that you can refer to at that point so that you'll know, okay, if they say this, then I'm going to refer them. I'm not going to try to handle this myself. Although if you're comfortable handling it, by all means do it. So we've got it's a big challenge, but the things I've seen that just the wonderful, motivating couples that I've worked with, I just have to tell you, it's really worthwhile. So any other questions? So you guys, if you want to, I'd love you to meet me. I'll be in this other room, and there's wine and cheese, and hope you all can come by and just say hi if nothing else. But if you want to talk about anything, get some wine and cheese, of course. We'll see ya. Thank you.
This has been a Dana Miller Video Network presentation.